So he is a distinguished Air Force veteran and a cybersecurity leader who has spent nearly 2 decades transforming teams across the military, Fortune 100 companies, and global enterprises. We're really excited to have you here. Kind of start us off with your Air Force journey, Stanley. Tell us how your transition went.
Ooh, the Air Force journey. Okay. So graduated in 2007 from the Air Force Academy. I went down the path of being a pilot for a bit. Decided that wasn't the case for me, and then got into communications at the time. So then went that transitioned obviously into cybersecurity. So got out in 2016, but really when I was in communications, I was in everything from digging a hole to put fiber optic cable into putting satellites in the sky. I did everything in between. So I was on the defense side in the cybersecurity. I was not on the offensive side. So that's when I got out in 2016. So I again being garrison everywhere in the U.S. it seemed like, and then obviously deployed as well. But the communication piece was something that I was really excited about because again, communication was going to be, or now it's called cybersecurity, was always going to be the future, right? I think companies, people were always going to be involved in that. So one of the biggest things that I learned in the really the Air Force career in regards to the communication piece is that everything runs around with some sort of communication, right? Whether it's sending an email or it's trying to communicate to a satellite or a plane or a radio, there's always some fashion of that, and that transitioned well for the military, or excuse me, in the civilian sector. So I was excited to kind of transition in 2016 and went down the cybersecurity route at that point. So.
Awesome. And what were some of the struggles that you went through your transition? I know you've talked here before, but everyone here is a transitioning veteran, and I'm sure a lot of them are going to relate to what you have to say.
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer because again, each person's background is different,
Yeah.
right? Each role is different. But from my perspective, married with three kids at that time, uh, frankly, I needed a job, right? And that's a bit harsh, but it's true. So I didn't really accept a role that I was truly excited about because, again, being the sole provider for my family at the time, I needed income in my door, right? So I
Yeah.
knew I was accepting a position to get my foot in the door and be able to help my family do what we need to do as a family. But one of the biggest struggles was, I think everyone, at least I've experienced as well, is translating your skill set that is applicable to a corporate environment. Now, if you go from the military to a contract role by the federal government, easy peasy, right? The majority of the people that you're going to be talking with probably have your background and understand what you've gone through. But translating that skill set that you've done in the military to an applicable way in the corporate world was my biggest challenge. A lot of the times, too, because of certain things that when you get read out, you can't say certain things for 35 years or plus or whatever it is. So you say, hey, what'd you do? You're like, I dug a hole in the ground and put fiber optic cable in. Where? In an area of responsibility. Like it's those sort of things that you cannot share. But so for my biggest struggle is really translating my skill set that as being a leader in as a cybersecurity officer at the time and saying I can lead other teams in that cybersecurity realm. That was hard because they said, well, you have zero corporate experience. Well, no, duh. I don't have any corporate experience. I was in the military. So that was a bit kind of, but then what I did learn is once I got my foot in the door, because of the skill sets that we've learned in the military and the experience running at a fast pace in area of responsibilities, I was able to go through the ranks faster, gain more responsibility because they recognize, oh, wow, you do actually have experience. Yes, I know how to lead. I know how to do these sort of things. So that was the struggle, is translating that experience into an applicable way for corporate.
Yeah, 100%. Starting with what you first said, someone in the comments already said that they relate to that. We talk a lot about like, oh, find a job that you love, find your dream job, your forever career, but sometimes that's just not possible. And I appreciate you keeping that real. Like it's
Yeah, I think
sometimes you just have to provide for your family.
that's why I get invited back because I guess I am a bit too real. But at the same time, no different than any corporate company is my employee ID number is a line item on someone's financial statement. So I don't take that lightly. But in my opinion, my family, well, really my wife, well, my beliefs first, but my wife and my kids are more important than a job. I just want to feed them. I want to be able to do that. So I made sure that I got my foot in the door that a company would be able to give me that experience so I then can branch out. Because frankly, I'll be transparent, is once I got that role, I was immediately starting to look for a new job, starting to network. People I met, my coworkers, hey, who do you know? Oh, my husband works over here, or my wife works over here, or my brother. I was already networking, finding out of that because I knew I wanted to leave and it was temporary. So I did really well, worked really hard, but at the same time, it's kind of like a duck on water. I was trying to find a way to get out because I knew I wasn't
Yeah.
going to be there long term.
Yeah, you led me straight into my next question. Because you started with you weren't in a job that you loved. When was it? You said it was immediately that you started looking for your next position.
Immediately.
And what other kind of stuff were you doing to find that?
So for me, it was one, the people that I was working with, right? And finding out who they knew. So I was always using LinkedIn. That's the simplest
Mhm.
way at that time was connect them on LinkedIn. Hey, I'm seeing John in my screen, so I'm not picking on you, John, but John Cox. If I saw John Cox, say, hey, John, hey, we work on this project. Hey, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. You mind if I send you a request? And I find out John has a brother that works somewhere else. I go, hey, can you introduce me to your brother? I have this. And all of a sudden that started. Now, some of them may not have gone anywhere. Some go, nah, we're good, man. I don't want to connect. Okay. I didn't take that personal. It wasn't an emotional decision for me again, because if I had the right perspective in mind, which was my family and what I needed to provide, because again, the transition going from, and again, I separated, I didn't retire, the financial costs, the insurance cost, healthcare, all that sort of stuff now was on my plate. So that little bit transition, I knew I had to make more money to kind of cover that sort of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing that I've learned is no is okay. I've always had a hard time getting told no. So when someone says that, I'm like, no, but starting to realize like if they say no, then maybe that's not the kind of person you want to be around, or maybe it's not meant to be. So you're just meant to end up somewhere else.
yeah, to add a little bit of flavor to that, I think what I did recognize too is that we're all salespeople. And some of you go, oh, I'm never going to be in sales. Well, ask your spouse. You did a really good sales job. So one of the things that what I constantly do is making sure that I'm always networking, even in this current role as a director in cybersecurity engineering. I'm always constantly networking because again, entertainment could hit the crap shoot like we did in 2020. Well, then what do you need cybersecurity for if there's no events, right? If we're not supporting anything, things of that nature. So I'm constantly networking regardless. And again, going to be transparent here, and if my boss was here as well, I would share it. But I also interview with companies as well. Now, I don't mean a formal interview, meaning I applied for a position and doing that. No, I have a connections to the point where I want to make sure that I'm always looking ahead because again, my employee ID number is a line item in someone's financial statement, so I don't take that lightly, right? If you haven't heard the news, Verizon is laying off 13,000 employees. Well, that's a reason, right? So that I'm constantly looking for that to ensure that I'm equipped and ready because I am dependent on an income source that's really out of my control. So,
Yeah. Out of my curiosity, how would that interview go? So you have a position that you're happy in. You're not really looking to move right now. How does that interview go?
oh,
Um,
that's a
if,
really good question. So, if you can't tell, I'm wearing a CrowdStrike for those who are cybersecurity. So when you go to a conference or something like that that a company provides, or if there's events that our company does that internally, I will constantly be saying, "Hey, are you open to conversation about opportunities out there?" And then when I do get that sit down, it's more of, "Hey, what problems do you have?" As I'm asking. Let's say I'm going to use John as an example again because he's in my center point is John, he says, I have this problem in engineering, I have this issue with staff, I have this. If my skill set aligns, I said, wow, that sounds a credible opportunity. Here's what I've done in my current role, and here's what I'm looking to advance. It's just a conversation, right? There's nothing formal. My data is not within their application process. It's really just for me to learn. And if I may not be able to help them, I go, but you know what? And again, I'm going to use Rob because Rob's in my viewpoint. Rob, hey, I know Rob. Hey, John, let me introduce you to Rob because I think he has the skill set that you're looking for, and I know he's open for a new role, even though he's currently employed. So
yeah.
that's what that is. It's a conversation to build a network. It really
And do
is.
you usually get pretty good feedback from the employers when you have those kind of conversations? Or
I,
have you ever gotten like why are you here talking to me if you have a
so it's
job?
not the employer, it's the person. So we
Okay.
got to dictate between or distinguish between the two. It's the person that I know or have been introduced to on that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a prime example too. for a time, I was getting constantly on LinkedIn requests from people who were fellow classmates of mine. And I say fellow classmates of mine that graduated in 2007 to about 2010, and they were Naval Academy or they were West Point or they're USAFA. They would say, "Hey, we have similar connections. I would love to learn about what you're doing in your role, even though I'm currently employed." That right there was building, right? Say, "Hey, how did you get your role as a director of cybersecurity engineering?" Well, maybe you'll ask that question, but we can get into that. But that I was sharing how I did it. And it was
Yeah.
amazing when we did that, that person that I connected with, she got promoted to a VP because some of the things that we connected on. And it wasn't because of me. I just said, "Hey, you need to challenge yourself to do this, start networking," and she did. And so it
Okay.
worked. So
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not interviews, it's just talking to
yeah,
people.
yeah, but it is an interview in the sense of you want to learn about them, the company,
Yeah.
right? Or because the company you may think looks good on digital paper, their website, but then when you start to connect them, they're like, "Oh, well," then you're like, "Oh, I don't know if that's really for me," right? It's kind of like you think about it like a first date. It look good on the digital, and then you show up, you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow, you chew like a cow, just like I do. Hey, we may be a good fit," kind of thing. So it'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely. On your LinkedIn page, I was looking at it, and the first sentence in your bio caught my eye, the weaving chaos into triumph. Can
Yeah.
you tell us more about that? I'm just curious
Yeah.
about what
So
that
in
means to you and why that's
cybersecurity,
on there.
no, that's a very good point because cybersecurity never sleeps, right? Bad actors, threat actors, they want to ruin people's lives. They want to ruin companies. We don't take that lightly. So it's chaotic. And what I mean by that, kind of weaving that into something more tangible, is that there's always going to be problems, always, right? And sometimes they're in an instant. Like we got information yesterday by a particular problem that we have to address within a particular vendor,
Mhm.
and we were already equipped and prepared to resolve that by Q1. Well, now the amount of work that we have to do and the problem has actually significantly grown by 100-fold. So that's chaotic, right? And we as a company, we close our doors the last couple of weeks of the month, the beginning of January. So that's what we do as a company. Well, what does that mean? Now the pressure's on. We have only now 12 days of working days to get this resolved to a point where it's in a better position where we were before. So is that chaotic? 100%. And here's the thing, you're dealing with humans. It's always going to be chaotic. And that's not a downplay on human. Obviously, I've won, but it's you're dealing with that, right? The emotional thing, the convenience of, hey, cybersecurity is disrupting my convenience. Someone's going to be emotionally respond to that. When you're dealing with technology, it only does what you tell it to do. And then when it doesn't tell what if it doesn't do what you said to do, there's a problem. That becomes chaotic, especially if we're processing tickets or something of that nature and it's not working, that's chaotic. But we as a team have to ensure that we take that chaotic, I'll say mechanism and turn it into something that is actionable and impactful and valuable so that we can actually solve the problem versus be associated to this is chaotic. You're right. We'll give you a few minutes to fill, and this is chaotic. Okay, now let's solve the problem. Because again, our fans, our artists, our colleagues don't care. They want to make sure that they have their ability to do what they need to do.
Yeah. As you said, cybersecurity is very chaotic. Do you see any areas in cybersecurity growing a lot here in the next few years?
Yes, I will say it is. And you're going to hear the term AI, right, quite a bit. So where it's growing is that the particular vendors and partnerships that we have, we are teaching people to enable AI more, not to replace, right? So we have embraced that as well, is that our entire company at some point will have AI on their workstations, every single person. And they are going to encourage everyone to use it because they're not being replaced. They're being enabled in order to be more functional, more productive, more effective. And so we can actually resolve the more complex problems, which are dealing with typically with people and things that we need to do. That's what we're embraced. So when you think about is it growing? Yes, it's growing in the fashion that we are building tools that we're able to leverage AI where bad actors and threat actors are using it constantly, right? So
Mhm.
no surprise to say, well, why are they being able to compromise your systems? They're using AI. So we're not going to use that as well to our advantage. So for cybersecurity piece, it's we're looking for people and this is me being real again. I can care less if you have 17 certifications. That means nothing to me. It means nothing to our CISO as well, our Chief Information Security Officer. Why? Is because he's not even high school educated. He's not even college educated. He never graduated high school, but yet he's a CISO of a $40 billion company-ish. Well, that's kind of challenging, right? So what that means is that great, you can study well and take a test. We look for, when you talk about what's exciting, is that we're seeing younger individuals who are more equipped, more educated than those that have certs that may have gone to school, et cetera. We will focus on those individuals that can apply it immediately, not have the not have the theory based knowledge. So that's another trend we're seeing too, is they're being educated faster, they're able to learn quicker, and they're able to get into environments, especially like ours, and learn and then get promoted within our system.
Yeah. Going from not being high school educated to being a CISO is an insane story. That is so
Yeah, it is.
crazy.
It's really cool. I mean, I have zero certs,
Yeah.
none when it comes to cybersecurity. If you look at my profile, which you can, I'm bachelor. I have a bachelor's degree. There's probably people on here that can run circles around the education piece. But in our world, in the cybersecurity world, it doesn't necessarily really matter unless you can get the job done, because we will let your actions always speak louder than words.
Yeah. So what other attributes are you looking for besides not that they don't have certs and they're getting into cybersecurity for the first time, which a
So
lot of vets are. What are you
yeah,
looking
so
for?
for us, it's the applicable knowledge, right? So you have to be willing to learn. And I'm going to be delicate in saying that word learn, because when someone says, well, I got certs, I've learned. No, you studied and regurgitated, right? You applied it
Mhm.
to a test, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's real world experience. We're looking for that lab experience. We're looking for that someone, hey, I built a lab. Here's what I've done. I've actually done some penetration testing. I've been able to resolve or remediate it using these tools. And there's tons of free tools that you can use for all that. So it's really the applicable knowledge is what we're working for towards. Same is that having and we've kind of coined this a little bit in our internal teams, but have a yearning for learning, meaning that you have an extreme desire to learn, right? Not come in and say, hey, I have all these certs, I have all this education, I have 20 years experience in military in this. That's great. Why does that matter to me? Right.
Mm.
So that's cool that your resume gets you the door open, but we really want people to show us, again, a show and tell, not just tell. So
Yeah.
we look for that yearning for learning to ensure, because someone who's enthusiastic and open-minded to learn, they're typically a lot better taking direction and being able to apply it immediately. Those who think that they have what they need, we don't bring those on board.
Yeah, 100%. So talking about that, is the training program when someone comes on at Live Nation pretty expensive then? If you guys are really looking for that?
Not really,
Okay.
because it's readily available everywhere. So
Hmm.
we do have specialized training on the tools that we have, but when it comes to cybersecurity, no, it's readily available.
Okay. What's
Because
the
again,
culture?
someone who is a yearner for learning,
Yeah.
they know that, and they're not going to wait for someone to say, "Well, no one told me I needed to get training." Then you're not a good fit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I really like
If
that
you're
mindset. It's
waiting
an
for
easy
us to,
way to tell.
if you're waiting for us to tell you, okay, like that's all right,
See you
probably
later.
not a good fit.
Yeah. What's the culture like then in your guys's
In what? That's a
in the
big
company?
question. Are you talking about like my team, or are you talking about like a company?
Yeah, specifically within your team or as the company as a whole, as what's your experience with the culture?
So I've been here for 2 years. It's flown by. For me, it is an entrepreneurial like-minded mindset.
Hmm.
So having the ability to take full responsibility of an action and put it in play is, if, as long as you can back it up with data and show that, no one cares if you're an analyst one or if you're a senior VP. Who cares? We don't really focus on the who gets credit. We focus on, again, our artists, our colleagues, our fans, and making sure that whatever we're doing, we're creating a secure environment for them to do that, right? We never want them to think about, hey, can I purchase this ticket and will my data be safe? Right? Can I enter this event and scan my ticket and my data be safe? Can I, an artist, be able to share the content that they have and keep that content proprietary to them? Can they feel safe doing that? So that's safe and secure, I should say. So for us, the culture is really, again, the yearning for learning, having a love for entertainment, and at the same time have an entrepreneurial spirit to ensure that you are willing to do what it takes to get the job done. And no matter who gets the credit, who cares? We want to make sure that we're taking care of our, like I said, artists, colleagues, and our fans in a safe and secure manner.
Yeah, I love that. I know all veterans, we're all very team based. So I really like that. We're all used to really working a team, giving credit to the team. So I know we're all looking for kind of a workplace that encompasses that. Uh, as the director of your team, could you boil your like maybe leadership philosophy down into a couple words? How do you lead your teams?
Oh wow, I had that presentation on hand. It's kind of crazy that you asked that. For me, it's specifically so if you ever read a book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People,
Yeah.
if you've ever read that, I follow that philosophy quite a bit. At the same time, I believe that healthy conflict is good. And I say
Mhm.
healthy conflict, right? Not conflict. It's not like we're all looking for it, but a healthy conflict is good because again, that unlocks and open doors and windows that we weren't ready available. Because here's the thing, um, I hire people, especially we just hired a few engineers that are way beyond my engineering skills, as at the same time mindset and intelligence. Why? Is because if I'm the smartest person in the room, then it's not a good room to be in. So why I share that philosophy is that I'm constantly networking not only internally with my team, but at the same time externally within our company to find those individuals and build relationships. So I believe it's not transactional. A lot of times, and when it comes to technology and cybersecurity work, some things can be very transactional. But at times, I think just being transactional is a challenge where I build on relationships. So for me, I want to know the individual and what they're willing to share with me on who they are. That doesn't necessarily mean tell me your favorite color, tell me hey, my favorite movie. That's not what that means. It means how do you operate? How do you communicate? How do you take feedback? Are you willing to learn new things? Do you prefer written feedback or verbal? Do you want to be on video or do you not want to be like those little intricacies matter? Or how do you want to be communicated to in the morning? Are you more of a yeah, send me an email or you want to be on a instant message type mechanism. So for my philosophy is really simple is coaching. I
Mhm.
coach, right? So I don't believe in my opinion, in management because I think managers are very transactional. Did you get this done? Yep, cool, awesome. A leader is like, hey, I saw that you got this done. What did you learn? Or is there something that was missed? Can I help you do a little faster? That's the leadership aspect. So I'm more of the coaching the leadership style in the sense of following the seven habits of highly effective people. I follow that pretty heavily. And the last thing I'll share too is because I'm kind of just running through my presentation I give to every new engineer that shows up is Parkinson's law. You probably have heard Elon Musk talk about, a lot of CEOs talk about this, is that Parkinson's law, the work will always expand to the time given. So you say, hey, I'll do that tomorrow. Guess what? You're going to do it tomorrow. But if you say, hey, I'm going to do this in the next 10 minutes, and you're going to get it, the surprising, you'll get it done. So we operate in that way as well. So we challenge ourselves in that fashion. So the big challenge I just told you about a certain vendor gave us within a notice that we need, guess what? It's going to get done prior to our break. Why? It's because people want to be on a break. So imagine that 6 months of work or so may get broken down into 2 weeks. And imagine that, and it will. So it's because again, Parkinson's law. So you can look that up. It's something that we follow as well, is we want to challenge ourselves to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing that humans love more than their own time. So if you give them a chance to be on their own time for longer, they're 100% going to take it. Also, you're going to get better work out of people if you act like a person to them. You're not, like you said, not a manager, but you act like a human, someone that interacts with them and cares about all of their success.
Yep.
Yeah. For a bunch of veterans who might want to be get breaking into this career field, what do you think a realistic roadmap looks like for them if they're starting from zero and trying to get into cybersecurity?
Well, I would say you need to learn networking is the
Mm,
biggest one. That is something that people, I would say, kind of throw to the side. They want to know all the techniques of, all the MITRE techniques. They want to learn about penetration testing. They want all that sort of stuff, the cool stuff, right? The offensive. Hey, I want to know how to do all that hacking. That's great. But if you have the foundational principles of networking, that is specific is one of the biggest things that I would say. So is the networking, learning network IP addressing, how that operates, the functionality of it, And then at the same time, having the information technology foundation is going to be the biggest thing. So for me, it's specifically around having the mindset of learning, one. But if I was fresh and I knew nothing about cybersecurity, I would learn how to define cybersecurity and what that means, right? Because some people just say it's always the bad actors, right? You hear things on the news, someone compromised this, there was a ransomware, things of that nature. But if you don't even know what that means, then it's not even relevant for you, right? So starting fresh would be really, again, I can't stress enough about networking, but learning that first and then understanding how that intricacy goes into cybersecurity, that is something that I would push as well. But having the information technology foundations first, because a lot of people believe that, hey, if I know tech, I can jump into cybersecurity. That is true, but you have to understand the intricacies of what information technology is incorporated in cybersecurity. It's not, hey, I'm going to go up one. It's incorporated because our cybersecurity engineers and analysts, they're vast in skill set in many different ways, right? So you can think about CI/CD pipelining. They can think about platform management. They can think about SaaS applications. A lot of these things, they may not know the deep and depth of it, but they understand how it works. So understanding where information technology is embedded into cybersecurity is kind of where the biggest step would be.
Yeah. I think it's funny. Somebody mentioned it in the comments. A couple of us thought when you said networking, we immediately went to networking with
No,
people.
no.
So,
Networking IP addresses, because everything, even this, right, the Zoom has an IP address associated to it. Bad actors know how to leverage that, know how to
yeah.
mask it. It's just in my opinion, it's boring work, and no one really wants to do it. But if you're foundational and you understand it, you'll be way ahead of those that don't.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can tell a couple of us definitely aren't in the cyber world in
It's
here.
okay. All right.
We automatically went to the people.
Well, you should do that too, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say also important. You brought that up earlier, so definitely don't discount that part. But if you could talk to a company and fix only three cyber priorities, do you have an idea of what you could tell them to focus on?
Oh, that's a really good question. One would be actually having cybersecurity as a priority, one.
Mm,
Versus and I say that is instead of kind of, I look at it like this. We all own homes or you rent or whatever you do. Cybersecurity at some point is just kind of sometimes a masking of, hey, I have cybersecurity. Well, let's just use an example. If you have a front door and you need to be secure, well, that lock that you use is cybersecurity. Some could use it as, hey, I got string attached to it and it's locked my door. Well, that's compliant, right? You have a door that is locked. Those are companies out there that have compliance for cybersecurity. So my thing would be is that switching the mindset of being compliant versus actually being secure, two separate things. Because in my
mm,
opinion, if you're secure, you will become compliant. So one of those things would be that is making cybersecurity a priority. Because
yeah.
everything else, 'cause again, if you could get compromised, then you don't have a company.
Hmm.
You can have all the fancy things that you have, that too. So two would be specificity. And what I mean by that is having clarity on what you're trying to accomplish. Because a lot of companies they want the new AI, they follow the trend for that, or hey, there's this new tool, and they do that, but there's no clarity of why. Having specificity and clarity on what you're trying to accomplish is one of the biggest things. And I would suggest that for everyone here too, is when you're looking for a role, you need to be specific. You say, oh, I just want to work in this. That doesn't, what does that mean? So specificity is one of the biggest things too. And then the third one I would say is hyper focus, hyper alignment teams. Because at times when there's a generic, say, oh, that team does this, but there's no specificity to that and there's no hyper focus, there's a lot of hands in the pots that don't necessarily need to be. And so then you lose momentum. When you have a reorganization and hyper, and when I say reorganization, I don't mean getting rid of people. What I mean by that is aligning to the specifics to this team is going to focus on this, right? If
Mm,
building a house as an example, right? There's a team of people that build a foundation, but that team doesn't necessarily do the framing. or the plumbing or that those are hyper focused teams that know how to do it. Now there I get it. There are teams that have generalists that can do a lot, but when it comes to the pace that we run, we want teams that are hyper focused. The team that only builds the foundation, the team that only does the framing, the team that only does the plumbing, the other team that does the electrical work. So having that hyper aligned team hyper focus is going to help that as well. It's going to be slow at first because people recognize, oh, I want to go do that. You do foundation. Stop trying to plumb, right? You
Yeah.
don't do plumbing. So that takes time, and so I think that is one of the three that I would say.
I think that's just something that a lot of veterans struggle with is we've all tried to be a jack of all trades our
Yep.
entire career in the
I was one of
military.
them.
It's better if you have a bunch of skills so you can do all these different things. So I think a lot of us are running into that where it's
Mhm.
not great to come off as a jack of all trades anymore.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If you looked at my LinkedIn, which I'm sure some of you have, and don't judge me too much, is that I'm not an engineer. If you look at there and you look at all my skill sets, none of it says engineering at
Mhm.
all. None of it. And this may be too much share, which frankly I don't care, not that I don't care about you, is the fact that um, I've never logged on to a command line interface. So what does that mean? I've never been on a screen to say, here's an engineering work, I'm doing coding and I'm going to change it. Some of you might be frustrated with that. That might annoy you because you're like, I can walk circles around you, and you could, but it has nothing to do with getting things done. So my career is specifically around getting things done, getting into the right doors, getting the right problem solved, because problem solving isn't just necessarily, hey, I'm going to solve these problems, but are you solving the right problem? Are you solving the problems that are most impactful? So what I would suggest for all the veterans here, when you're going through those interviews and the things, is being specific on what problems are you solving that can help that company that you're applying to. If you can't describe that, then why are you interviewing? So, and I get it, you got to put income on in your bank account in order to support your family or whatever your situation is. But that's where I would challenge you as I continue to interview engineers is saying, well, why would I want you to come up here? What problems are you solving? Or what problems have you solved? Because that tells me how they critically think, how they're able to communicate that, and how they're able to be very specific on what they've done. That tells me that they actually did it. They weren't part of a team that did it and they're just taking portions of what they did. No, they're telling me that here's what I did and why. That's critical when you're interviewing, in my opinion, is to say, here's what I've done and here's how it's going to apply to you based on the research I did with your company.
Yeah. Which I feel like all of us have those things that we've done or those skills that we've had. We've all done worked in a team and done these tasks in the military. So we just need to learn how to use them and how to speak on them, which is the difficult part. Was there anything that the military maybe did or didn't prepare you for in the corporate world? Like maybe something you were like, oh, this is good. This is what I expected, or maybe you something you didn't expect even a little bit.
Yeah, the willingness for people to work hard. And because why I say that is because in the military, depending on what role you did, it's a command and authority, right? It's command and control. So again, picking on John and Rob here, if they were my commanders and they said, "Hey, Stanley, do this," I don't question it. Now, there's a difference between questioning and asking questions. I don't question it, but I may ask questions for clarity. And at some point, John and Rob may just say, "Hey, LT, you just need to do it." Okay, salute smartly and move on. The corporate world, there, it's not that way, right? Hey, I got to go do this. I got to do that. Can't, I got to go pick up my kids. And there's nothing wrong with all that because I have four kids myself. I shouldn't say that. I did it. My wife did. So is that for me is that willingness to work hard, right? I think in the military at some point we do what it takes to get the mission done. That mindset is not necessarily shared across the corporate sector because they're earning a paycheck and they're happy just with earning a paycheck and doing the bare minimum. Nothing wrong with that. I have engineers that are that way and they're okay with that. And we're okay with that because they do good work by doing that basic work. But for those who are doers, it is a very small percentage of people that do that. So don't ever assume. Another thing I did learn is don't ever assume just because someone has a job title and they may be an authority that they're actually doing what they're saying they're doing.
Mhm.
But because a job title, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily equate to work done. So that
Yeah.
was an eye opener for me when I'm like, hey, I got 20 minutes. Can we get this done? Let's do that tomorrow, right? As we all coming towards the end of the holidays, I haven't had this yet, but I'm pretty sure I will here in the next week, if not today, when someone goes, that's a really good conversation for 2026. Okay. Okay. So we're December 3rd. I think we still have, no, no. Again, not everyone shares that willingness to work hard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think some of us are running into that already. But if you guys have any questions, raise your hands now. But on the opposite side of the coin, is there anything that civilians might have misunderstood from military members, like on the opposite side?
Yes, 100%. People leadership, mission, and work ethic. They believe that we're just sitting somewhere and there's some authoritative figure telling everyone what to do. Now, that is true in the basic level, but at the same time, we know how to critically think. We know how to problem solve. We know how to collaborate. We know how to communicate. We know how to people lead, right? We know how to work in an environment that is brand new, that you just showed up, jumped off the C1, or I shouldn't say jumped off, but walked off the C-130, et cetera, and literally got a binder and said, here's your new job. And here's your new person that you just replaced. And you're like, well, where's John? Well, John's getting on the plane that you just got off. And we've learned how to adapt in those scenarios, right? Garrison as well. But when you show up to a new unit, you have no idea what's going on. Same different, no different than a new corporate company that you work for. Got to build relationships, right? Find out who's who, find out who's the workers, who's are not, right? Who's the challenge. Like we have the corporate experience, but unfortunately, at times that civilian sector doesn't necessarily equate to that. They just think, like the Secretary of Defense just sits there and says, everyone do what I say and you will do it. That is true at the basic level, but at the same time, we are dealing with everything that any corporate company is dealing with. The difference is that you're calling them the name that they want to be called instead of a sir or a ma'am or a captain or sergeant or a private, whatever. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So that is the hardest part, in my opinion, is that the civilian sector doesn't understand we deal with the same problems that you deal with. The difference is we just all wear the same uniform and show up on time, right? Kind of thing. So
Yeah, I always like asking those two questions because I've had some laughable moments in the past couple months of transitioning of just both sides where some civilian members are just say some like things to me that seem very silly but that they just don't know.
they
And
don't.
then off me as well saying some stuff that is probably obvious to them but I didn't know. So I like to hear everyone's perspective on that because it's all a little bit different.
Mhm.
Do you think that leading troops versus leading corporate teams is a lot different, or are they similar?
Uh, I think it depends on the scenario, right? In for me, I worked at a desk, right? And except for when I was digging holes, things like that. So for me to be in a life or death situation is different, right? Because when you said troops, I would challenge that and said I didn't lead troops. I led airmen, so we led people that were desk jockeys. For someone who's led troops in a life or death situation and getting shot at, does it is there going to be a challenge of different? Absolutely, right? Because they are a life and death situation. Bombs on target, for example, if the communication line between a soldier and a pilot isn't working well and there needs to be a time on target, that's a big deal. What we've learned in our scenarios as Live Nation is that, I don't like using the word just, but in the event, we're just selling tickets and having entertainment. It's not a life or death, right? It doesn't, we're not healthcare that's affecting this equipment's not working properly and it could eventually save someone's life because the server went down that was supporting that equipment, right? We are processing tickets for someone to have an entertainment experience. Now, some would argue, and I have family members that argue, say, well, that's a life and death. I'm like, is it though? Is it real? But they would argue, and I can accept that. But at the same time, you have to put it in perspective, right? So when you say, is it relevant? Yes, but it is dependent on what that role is. But dealing with people and their emotional challenge, their mental challenges, their family challenges, as the holistic as a human being, Yes, it applies. But the difference is someone may be holding a keyboard and a mouse versus a rifle, right? So it is a little bit different in that sense. But does it apply across the board? 100%. Problems are, again, problems, no matter what it is. It's more
Mhm.
of how you react to those problems and how do you resolve them. That I think that would be the defining factor.
Yeah, 100%. I really like that answer. Someone just said it in the comments and it made me laugh because I was thinking it too. She said the way you're extending the abbreviations is impressive. You can tell you've been in the military. We all, all of our abbreviations are very, very common to us. But
Yeah, they are. But you, again, that's one thing that you'll learn in the corporate. They have their own abbreviations too. So don't shy away from, like, wow, you use a lot of abbreviations. You go, but then when you get into their company, they do the same thing. So don't, it's not a military thing.
okay,
They,
okay.
you know,
They have
they,
their own language as well.
they do. They do. Like I can say CSERT to you and you're like, what does that mean? I could say DET to you. You're like, what does that mean? Exactly. It's an organizational culture. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's an
Yeah.
organizational culture thing. So same with your family. Like if I said MF to you, you don't know what that means to, but to my family, that means something to us. So
Okay.
it's just
Yeah, that makes
don't
sense.
let
Yeah.
them tell you that, oh, you're military and you have all these acronyms, and then you show up and you're like, there's a list of acronyms here. I have no idea what that means. No different.
Good to go. No, that makes me feel better. I just have one last question, and it's for someone in here who might be nervous or anxious to go into the civilian world, especially with specifically the AI, since we're talking to you. What do
Mm.
you have to say to them?
Whew, that's a big question. Um,
It is.
because I've always taught my engineers this for years is that AI is not here to replace you.
Mm,
Uh, People are who know AI are here to replace you. So because we have an engineer, and we use this as an example, and it is true. We have an engineer that has built agents that can do the amount of work of an analyst as an individual. So that person is managing an agent that can do the work of an analyst. And I say an analyst like an analyst one, which is like the most junior level.
mhm.
So it's not that AI replaced that analyst. It was the engineer that built the agentic AI in order to replace that type of work that is mundane, that is constant, right? That can look at data and that person can actually evaluate that data in a faster realm than a human being trying to learn and do it in that sense.
Okay.
So I would challenge everyone that it's not the fact that AI is replacing you. Now, there are different roles, right? If you're a writer, that's hard to say that AI could replace you because it could, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the case. But when it comes to even that, learning how to leverage it to your advantage is really what people are deciding to do. It's not that it's replacing you. It's those individuals who understand it and learn it and can actually widen the net for the applicability that are replacing you.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that. I wanted to ask because I know AI and like the media is really big right now. So I just kind of I wanted to see what your opinion was on
And
that.
Lauren, you're right. So we actually have to deal with that in entertainment, right? Because
Yeah.
you can actually have somebody that does that and then trying to sell it. Yes. So that is a true case. We deal with it constantly. We're trying to prevent all that, right? Because if you're a Swiftie, which I never knew was a term until I got here. So, but it is a true thing. So, yeah, and yes, copying voices, Timothy. Yes, we have an entire team that deals with that. Again, when we say keeping our artists, our fans, and our colleagues safe and secure, a lot of that is incorporated.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Stanley. It was
yeah,
really interesting
absolutely.
talking to you. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
everyone, and best to you. And you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Again, if I can leverage my network to help you in any way, I'm more than happy to do that, to do introductions or something if you see within my network. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be getting a bunch of LinkedIn connections after this,
That's
so we
totally fine.
appreciate you.
I'm happy to do it. Those are exciting when I am able to do that. So.
Well, have a great rest of your